Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's call. I'm Tiffany Cope with the Business Operations Team for the Department of City Planning, and I would like to welcome you to today's meeting. We now have a quorum. This meeting will be recorded. Madam Chair, you may begin when ready. You're on mute, Madam Chair, if you're speaking.
Thank you. Always the way to start a meeting with the person on mute. Good afternoon. Today's Wednesday, July 14th, 2021. We'd like to thank you for tuning in to the City of Atlanta Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee virtual meeting. My name is Malloy Peterson, Chair of the committee. This is a 5-member advisory committee appointed by the mayor and the City of Atlanta. The purpose of the Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee pursuant to City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, Part 3, Part 6, Chapter 4, and Section 6-5008 is as follows. 1, to serve an advisory capacity to assist and advise the Atlanta City Council with regard to the adoption and amendment of the city's Development Impact Fee Ordinance or any new Development Impact Fee Ordinance. 2, to receive the annual report required by OCGA 36-71-8 D2, and if warranted upon review of the annual report, submit a written report to the Atlanta City Council of any perceived inequities in the expenditures of impact fees collected for roads, streets, bridges, including rights of way, traffic signals, landscaping, or any local component of state or federal highways. 3, pursuant to OCGA 36-71-5C, no action of the committee shall be considered a necessary prerequisite for action by the Atlanta City Council in regard to the adoption of a development impact fee ordinance. Until further notice, the meeting of the City of Atlanta Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee will meet virtually via Zoom. We ask for your patience in the event of technical difficulties that may cause committee members to experience a loss or interrupted connection. Staff has muted all microphones, and we ask that all participants remain muted for the duration of the meeting unless you have been recognized by the chair. This will minimize background noise and feedback and ensure that all participants can hear all comments clearly. For the benefit of anyone who is called in, I will ask each committee member to please identify yourself each time you speak, make a motion, or vote. Public comment received via the COA impact fee at atlantagA.gov. So that's COA impact fee at atlantagA.gov mailbox up to 1 hour before each meeting will be read by staff during the public comment period and posted online via the impact fee update website. At this time, I'll take a roll call to present a quorum and call the meeting to order. Jim Brown. Kevin Green.
I'm here.
Jim Brown's not in attendance, I don't believe. Stacy McCoy. Stacy, apologize, I don't see everybody on there.
No, Stacy has not arrived yet.
Okay, all right. Roderick Teachy.
Present.
Okay, so with 3 members present, we do have a quorum and we'll proceed with the meeting. A copy of the agenda for today's meeting was sent to committee members and can be found on our website. Staff will type a link into the chat. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Kevin Green moved to approve the agenda.
Rod Teachy, second.
Okay, seeing that we have a second, we'll take a vote on the approval of the agenda. Kevin Green
Yes.
and Rod Teachy.
Yes.
I'm Malloy Peterson, vote yes. So the motion carries with a vote of 3 yeas, 0 nays. Next, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the January 29th, 2021 meeting minutes.
Rod Teachy, so moved.
Kevin Green, second.
Seeing we have a second, we'll take a vote on approval of the January 29th, 2021 meeting invites. Rod Teachy,
Yes.
Kevin Green,
Yes. Meeting minutes. Yes.
and I'm Malloy Peterson, vote yes. So the motion carries with a vote of 3 yeas, 0 nays. Now the staff will read public comment received via the COA impact fees mailbox.
There were no comments received, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So next on our agenda, we're going to have the City Planning Department, along with members from ATL DOT, prepared to present the Transportation Impact Fee Equity Analysis of the 2021 to 2025 Capital Improvement Element, or CIE. And then following the presentation, the committee will discuss and vote on the distribution equity of transportation impact fees. A copy of this presentation was provided to the committee in advance. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Just give me a brief moment to share my screen. Okay, you all should be able to see my screen, hopefully. As stated earlier today, a part of the charge of the Impact Fee Advisory Committee is to report on the perceived inequities in the expenditure of transportation impact fees. A perceived inequity will result from funds being expended without proximity or level of service improvement to the areas of collection. Simply put, transportation impact fees must be used to fund projects that are in the same service area where funds were collected, or provide an improved level of service to the area of collection. Today's presentation is an analysis of the 2021-2025 Capital Improvements Element, or CIE, which covers fiscal years 2014 through 2019. Analysis of impact fees usually covers a 5 to 6 year time span in an effort to account for the timing of encumbrances to collections. Impact fees must be encumbered within 6 years of collection or must be refunded. Here you will see collections over the last 5 years, highlighting the core areas of development. As you can see, most of the development and therefore collections occurs in the north and south side service areas, to which you'll later see in the presentation. These areas also have the greatest level of encumbrances. The map presented here displays the encumbrances for the 2014 through 2019 fiscal years. And you will notice that most of the projects are concentrated in the north side service area, again, where collections are the greatest, as we saw on the previous slide. Underscoring the alignment between collections and encumbrances in this area. Of course, transportation projects are not limited to a boundary line. Therefore, there are projects that provide a level of service improvement to the community at large. As such, you will see there may be some overlap between the boundaries here on the map. This is the financial comparison of collections to encumbrances. You will notice using the 3 service areas, encumbrances do largely balance with collections. Looking at the chart below, we have north side with 13 million in collections and 14 million in encumbrances. South side has 5.6 million in collections and 3.9 million in encumbrances. West side has 2.2 million in collections and 2.2 million in encumbrances. And citywide has encumbered 1.7 million. Citywide comprises of projects that have an impact across the city. For example, a traffic control center, or in this specific case, the smart lighting pilot project. There are some variants with the totals not exactly matching. And this is again due to timing of encumbrances to collections. As I mentioned earlier, funds must be encumbered within 6 years of collecting. Therefore, funds are encumbered using the FIFO method, which has an impact on the totals not perfectly aligning. This map illustrates a visual presentation of the figures on the previous slide. Mapping both collections and encumbrances, which again does illustrate the equitable distribution of transportation impact fees as it relates to the 2021-2025 CIE. From here, I'll pass it over to ATL DOT to offer some insight into their approach and consideration of proximity. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. My name is Shantae Dura. I am a project manager for Atlanta Department of Transportation. So I will be discussing ATL DOT's approach for project selection, project priority, and also proximity. So starting off with project selection, there are three types of requests that's submitted through the CIE portal: area manager requests, council members requests, and also citizens requests. So once those requests come in, ATL DOT has formed its own internal process for selecting projects. Once Department of City Planning sends over the submitted project list from the portal after law reviews, our area managers vet the list, add any additional project information if they have it, and determine if it qualifies for funding or if matching funding is available. So in the event that it does not qualify, then the process kind of ends right there, and other funding sources may be researched or later identified. If it does qualify for impact fee funding, then a cost estimate is done, proximity check is conducted. Once that is completed, then the eligible project list goes to our strategy and planning team. They run it through the prioritization model. During that phase, scope, limits, project phase, procurement method, matching funds are all identified. And then after that, the list goes to the planning team and ARC approval. And then legislation is done to accept the CIE. To accept the CIE, I'm sorry. So following project selection, we'll discuss project priority. So determining which projects are a priority depends on a multitude of factors. So one being available funding, two, ATL DOT strategy and planning prioritization model and their recommendations, matching funds to offset cost, and also which phase the project is currently in, whether it's design, construction, scoping. Those things determine the priority of projects. So next we have proximity. Proximity checks are done at the beginning stage of the CIE process. It is mainly to check for any unproportional distributions between collections and project encumbrances. It is to ensure that where fees are being collected, fees are actually being spent. And just to summarize our approach, one thing to note is that all transportation projects are for the greater good. No matter what service area a project happens to be in, residents citywide benefits from these projects because it's in public right away. And I will turn it back over to you, Tiffany. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I would like to acknowledge Jim Brown has joined us.
Hey, Jim. Jim?
It appears to have no sound right now.
Yeah.
He's gone. Oh, there he is. Hi, Jim. Jim, should I call it? I was going to try to have him say present, but
He may be having some technical issues. Okay, it looks like he's connecting again.
Jim, do you hear us? Okay, well, we'll acknowledge that Jim is trying to get on here, and if you can say present.
Maybe you can put it in the chat. It appears as though he doesn't have audio.
Very true.
Yeah.
Chat is available for you, Jim, if you figure that out. Okay, did you have more of your presentation? Was there more to the presentation, or is this sort of a Q&A?
No, that's all I have for you today.
Okay.
And we would open the floor for any questions or comments you may have, of course.
Okay, great. Anybody got questions? I'm sure we all do. Yeah, sure. Rod.
Yes, Rod Teachy. So for the staff, with respect to the encumbrances, the south side is the sector that is the most off from the collections. I know there's a timing issue that impacts that. Are there any projects in the queue that will be encumbered in the immediate future, next, I would say 6 months or so, to help close that gap? Or when do you see that gap being closed so that the encumbrances actually catch up with the collections?
Looks like we have Mr. N. McCray on with us. N, would you be able to speak to future projects that DOT have in the works for the South Side service area?
Sure. Actually, in the 2022 and 2026 list, we do have one larger project, the South Boulevard project, that is in the south section. That is receiving, I believe, 1.25 or $1.325 million for that project. So I don't believe that data has been incorporated into this presentation, because that's fairly new. As I said, it's on the 22-26 list. So that would definitely close that gap.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, did you have a question?
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. This is Kevin Green. As I see from the presentation that we are looking at an equity analysis for what's labeled the 2021 through 2025 CIE, and that's based upon collections and encumbrances from 2014 to 2019. Can you all explain the date differences? I mean, if it's 2021, why isn't 2020 on here, and why does it go to 2025? I mean, I know that these we all know that these monies are not expended the same year that they are encumbered, but that's one of my threshold questions.
Sure. So the 2021-2025 CIE includes the annual financial report for the fiscal year of 2019. The CIE has to include the financials from the last audited numbers. So for this particular cycle of the CIE 2021 through 25, it goes through that fiscal year of 2019.
So how often does the city have to submit an equity analysis?
This is done annually.
Was it done last year?
I can't speak to that. I do recall there was a presentation provided to you all, I believe December of 2019, with some information regarding equity analysis. I don't believe you guys voted on any perceived inequities, but there was a presentation in a work session for you all.
So to piggyback on Kevin's, a lot of my questions were procedural as well. But so that means right now we might be looking backwards, and it wasn't necessarily done every year, but in the future, the idea is that it's done each year by this committee.
Yes,
and,
that's
and
correct.
the city council one. Okay. And then this is also like in the weeds, but in the slide that you showed, page 6, and you said it shows both the fee collections, project encumbrances. Is anything that's a completed project on there, or can we assume everything is somewhere in the encumbrance section? Like, are there any monies that aren't on there at all? How do I say this? Are there any projects that completely happened because they were so early on that there's nothing left over encumbrance, so it's not on this map? Does this map include every project that happened over those?
Yes, so this includes projects that may be complete or could possibly still be in the works. So this just includes projects where funding has been allocated for those particular projects. So they could possibly be complete or they could be in the works.
Okay, so anything that happened from 14 to 19 is on this map.
That's correct.
Okay, and then the hot spot or whatever, that is where the money's.
Collected.
Huh, okay, that's where, that's the project, okay, got it. All right, thank you. And then, what's my other question? Oh, I know my other question was, where are we currently in this year's project? Like, I know that citizens and people could, I know they're like, I remember in one of the community meetings months ago, 4 months ago or so, that the list was like, you could go online and submit a project or whatever. Like, where are we, for example, for us who will be doing this in years in the future, where are we in this year's project process?
Sure. So we have began the process for the 2022 CIE. We have concluded our public hearing for that process as well. And it was adopted by City Council to transmit to the Department of Community Affairs and the Atlanta Regional Commission to conduct their review and approval of the project list. And once that review is complete, the CIE will continue through the legislative process to go back through council for their approval of the CIE ordinance.
One last thing, is that available? Like, is that something we could pull up even right now during the meeting? Is it, or is it still working? Okay. Gotcha.
No, the CIE draft is available online. And I can certainly offer that link to you all and put it in the chat as well. But the draft is currently available.
Okay. Do I have any other questions?
I do. It's maybe for Shantae or Ian. Can you explain when the ATL DOT does a proximity analysis as part of its initial scan of proposed projects? What does that proximity analysis look like? What does it look at, I should say?
So we look at the fees being collected in that service area against the current project encumbrances.
So proximity is if the fee were generated in the service area and expended in the service area, that is the proximity check?
Yes.
There's nothing more granular in terms of distance from,
No, we solely look at it within service areas.
okay. I mean, I don't know I guess I got another question before I go there. So I'm looking at the map that says, this map shows collections versus encumbrances. I see encumbrances in the form of projects, and then I see some hot spots on the map that I presume are collections, but none of the projects land in the collection spots. But then if you back up to this slide, you got a lot of bubbles all over the city that shows where the hot spots are. I guess my point is, it'd be good to see the projects over top of the hot spots of collections. They seem to map pretty well to me, but they're just not together on the same map. And I guess I wondered, why are there some hot spots on this map that don't correspond to a project?
Yeah, and I think I really don't think you will see that on the map, only because it's looked at based on service areas. So if the fees are collected in that particular service area, then they're going to be spent in that particular service area. But we don't go down to the granular level, as in making sure exactly where they're collected projects are happening in that exact spot. It's more so just that service area.
Even though it's not intended, I mean, it looks like it has a pretty good nexus with where the heat is. I just didn't know why there's a lot of missing heat map. I mean, for example, I don't show how this map here shows collections. Even though it says it shows collections, all I see is projects and then some bubbles that I guess I don't know what they mean.
Tiffany, those bubbles are the collections, correct?
Yes, the hotspot bubbles indicate collections and the dots and lines are the projects and encumbrances. I have taken your note, Kevin, so for the next analysis, I'll be sure to combine those maps to better highlight where the collections and encumbrances meet.
Yeah, I think because we've all had a good number of opportunities to discuss this and see the reporting. And I mean, I know we spent a lot of time with this over the last couple of years. And I won't speak for anybody else in the committee, but to say that when we run the numbers, they all jive in terms of where it's being impacted is where it's being spent in terms of the quadrant of the city or whatnot. But I feel the same with Kevin. I'm not like really good at visualization of data, but there's got to be a way. In one of these projects, like the one, I'm just making this up, like the one on the, south side, a couple of the small ones. I mean, who knows, those could be massive projects and not cost as much as one of the long ones, because the long one's a sidewalk and the other one's a bridge or so. If there were dollar amounts or if there was further data, because it looks good on the number level, but the way it shows out visually, it's almost more complicated, in my opinion. And maybe that's something we could work on over the year, is just work on the reporting to get it to where it's something, because you all know, I mean, the biggest thing, I'm sure you hear it all the time, but when this whole process started, people say, well, where do the impacts go? Where do the fees go? Where are they spent? Where are they spent? And this is trying to show that, but I still don't think you could just give it to a regular citizen and then to completely get it. That's without coming up with a solution.
Well, thank you for that. I'll certainly get with our GIS team to see if they could better drill down on the projects and collections and see if we can improve the mapping there going forward.
I mean, I think it's as simple as this. You've got a lot of hot spots on this map, and the ones that are red, where you see the biggest concentration of collections, do not exist on this map. They're just gone. And so they're not mapping against where the projects are. And I just think it's just a matter of the collection information is left off of that map. So that would be an easy fix.
Yes, I agree. I do see that the 3 maps on the collections over time slide is just highlighting those particular years that are indicated, 2017, 2015, and 2019. Whereas the map on the project versus encumbrance slide encompasses all 6 of the years. So it does kind of skew it visually. So I certainly understand the point of view there. So going forward, we will try to better improve the mapping so that visually is, able to be interpreted as well as looking at the numbers.
It'd also be that you also include the, I guess this might include you, I don't know how to do this without it getting too complicated, but like a roll up that's almost like an Excel spreadsheet on the next page, or just the table that just shows like the top projects per sector or something, and then projects that are giving, and then projects that are transportation. Like, it would be nice to also have some backup data so that you could say, oh, because of the such and such and such and such project, then that brought about these transportation. It'd be nice to just be a little more informed, and it's not public information. It'd just be nice to see it with this.
Okay.
Because I know we've seen it in the past.
Certainly.
Yeah, I think the opportunity here, I mean, Atlanta's already been singled out. It's the only municipality, as I understand this, required to show this.
Yes, that's
proximity
correct.
and submit an equity analysis. And I don't know that there's a lot of better ways to do it than the service areas that you've done, but you did go to the extra step of doing the heat of where they're collected, and the projects obviously map as to where they're being expended. So that would be helpful. Because if I'm a developer and I paid an impact fee and I learned that the fee was expended for a project that's 5 or 6 miles away from my project, I'm not sure I'd think it's within reasonable proximity, or that it's really going to have any meaningful impact on transportation level of service serving my project. But if I can kind of see, the heat of where it's generated and the heat of where and the location of where projects are being expended, that would help a lot. I mean, I even wonder if you could come up with a metric percentage of impact fees that are expended within 1 or 2 miles of where the fee was generated. Maybe that's getting too complicated, but it'd be interesting. Maybe it's a substantial equivalent of your heat map. I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
does anybody else have questions? Rod, Jim? Okay, sorry, Tiffany.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have one more. Excuse me if I'm wrong, but I believe, and this is Rob Teachy, I believe the encumbrance has to take place within 5 years of the collection of the fee. Is there a requirement on when the actual work has to be completed after it's encumbered, or but from the time it was initially collected?
I'm sorry, can you hear me, Rod? Okay, thank you. So it does have to be encumbered within 6 years, or it will have to be refunded. As far as the commencement of work, Kim Talon, are you able to speak to that? Let's see if Kim can.
Tiffany, she might be in dual meetings.
Rod, I'm not sure we can answer your question, but I do remember when we rolled up the total number or the total amount of impact fees that have been generated since 1994. That was about 120 million last I saw it. About a third of those had not been spent. So
Tiffany,
there does not seem to be a timeline for spending, just encumbering.
Yeah, looking at the DIFA Act, I don't see where it does indicate there has to be commencement of the project. But I can certainly dig a little deeper for you and follow up with you.
Kim actually wrote in the chat that there's no deadline. I think she's in another
Okay.
meeting. So yeah, there's no deadline.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And I would like to acknowledge that Stacy McCoy has joined us.
Stacy, I don't know if you heard any of this, but did you have any questions? If you did hear any of it, if not, we can move on to a vote if there's no other presentation or other questions.
I'm just joining Malloy. Unfortunately, I had a family emergency, so I
Oh.
literally just joined. Okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, well, I guess you did see the presentation. They reviewed the presentation and we've been asking questions. Nothing new added in terms of presentation
Okay.
material.
Thank you.
Okay, I skipped what I was supposed to say before we just jumped in Q&A, but are we okay to go to a vote, Tiffany? Okay, all right. Now we will vote if we believe there's an equitable distribution of where transportation impact fees are spent versus where they are collected in the 2021 to 2025 CIE. Members of the committee will vote with an affirmative yay if they believe transportation impact fees have been distributed equally, or with a no to the contrary. Kevin Green,
Yay.
Jim Brown. Jim Brown? Okay, we can't hear Jim.
He's on mute.
Jim, you're on mute. Sorry, I'm opening up, see if I can see. All right, we'll come back. Stacy McCoy.
Yay.
Oh, Jim Brown votes yay. All right, Stacy McCoy,
Yay.
Rod Teachy,
Yay.
and I'm Lloyd Peterson vote yay. So by a vote of 5-0, the committee agrees that the transportation impact fees have been distributed equitably and there are no perceived inequities in the encumbrances or expenditures of impact fee funds in the 2021 to 2025 CIE. We've come to the end of our agenda. Are there any additional comments or announcements from staff?
Yes. I would like to make an announcement that the Department of City Planning has decided to amend the updated impact fee ordinance. The amendment will now allow permit applicants to be vested under the old impact fees, so long as the submitted permit application is accepted by the Department of City Planning Office of Buildings. Initially, the updated ordinance stated a permit must be issued prior to the effective date of September 1st. This language has been amended and is going through the city's legislative process with a tentative adoption date of August 2nd. Mentioning earlier, I would also like to note that the 2022-2026 CIE is currently going through the legislative process as well, with a tentative adoption date of October 4th. And once that has been adopted, we will conduct the same analysis for that time frame, and we'll bring together this committee at that time for another review and analysis.
Can I ask a quick question? When you said, I mean, I know you had told us previously about the potential amendment or the amendments that's gone through. Would that change the other two dates to be the submitted date, or just the first date to be if you submitted for permit not received?
Correct. So it's now changed to if you have submitted a permit application that is accepted by the Office of Buildings.
Okay, but are they changing it for the other two ramp up deadlines? Like the first one comes in September, right? But then there's two other ones. Are they changing those?
As far as phasing in the fees, no, so that has not changed.
Okay, so they're not permanently changing the wording to submitted to instead of received permit for all of it, just for the first deadline.
No. It's going to permanently change to submitted permit application must be accepted, yes.
Okay.
Prior to the effective date of September 1st.
Okay.
Hey, Tiffany, it looks like Paul Thomas has his hand up, and so does Jonathan with our law department.
Let's see if I can get them on. Let's see.
I have a question. If we haven't spent a third of the money we collected, why do we need to collect more?
Well, we always need more money, Jim. But no, anytime development occurs, an impact fee may be assessed. So it is a continual process. Anytime development occurs, those fees are due.
But if you've got money you haven't spent and you've had it for years, what's the purpose? Unless you just, does that money get to stay in the general account or does it stay separate?
Well, the impact fee has a separate fund, so it remains in that impact fee general fund until it is encumbered or expended.
How much money's in there now?
I don't have the financials in front of me. I can follow up with our finance team and can certainly get that answer to you.
Tiffany, I believe Kim has responded to one of the questions in the chat.
Okay, thanks, Patty.
Perfect.
Thank
Kim
you, yeah.
wanted to make a note that the key to the application must be accepted by August 31st. Versus permit being issued by
Right.
August 31st.
My question was, August 1st is the first bump, right? But then there's two other dates in which it increases. I can't remember offhand what those dates are, but I know it's in the next year. You probably know, Tiffany. Right?
So that's pertaining to the fee increases, which is
Right.
being phased in. So those deadlines does not change. So they will go up 50% September 1st of this year, then 75% September 1st of 2022 to 100% the following year. But this amendment is just strictly regarding being vested under the old schedule. So as long as that permit application is accepted by August 31st, then that applicant would be vested under the old fee schedule.
Okay, so we're talking about a one-time like grandfathering vesting. Okay.
Correct. And we do have Jonathan Futrell from our law department on with us and wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Tiffany. I think you just clarified what I was going to
Okay.
comment to as well.
Thank you, Jonathan.
We've got Janity's hand up as well. Janity Sidfall, she's,
Hi, Janity.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be back together again. It's been a long time. I just wanted to clarify one thing, and that is the issue surrounding the
Janity, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Audio.
I almost complained and then I remembered how bad it has been at times. And oh gosh, we've come so far.
Yeah.
While we're waiting on Janity, I would just follow up on Jim's request, and that is, I do think it'd be nice to have an updated set of figures in terms of total collection over the duration of the impact fee versus encumbrances versus money spent. And I think, and I agree that we've got way more needs than we have available funds in terms of infrastructure and transportation needs. I think that the challenge is that the city is slow to execute projects, and impact fees are just a small piece of funding for larger projects that tend to always be delayed. So I can just say by firsthand knowledge that we've got projects that are languishing for years, trying to get them advanced. So I guess that issue of spending the money doesn't squarely fit in with the equity analysis, but I think it's a real and relevant issue.
I'm sorry, Jandy, hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you now.
Then I'm sorry, I don't know, I guess I blanked out for a minute, but I just wanted to say that, as part of this overall update, we were going to propose some administrative changes to just how our financial systems work and how we not only account for what's being spent and what's being collected, but how we can speed up the process of spending. Because impact fees are a very small portion of most projects. And the idea is that we have to do a better job of putting all of the financial pieces together, connecting financial sources for funding these projects in a more expedient way so that we can demonstrate how we're actually spending these funds. And so the fact that some of them are allowed to just be on the impact fee list with encumbered funds, but those encumbered funds not being demonstrated as being spent in an expedient way is critical, because that's not the point of this project, of having impact fees. The point of having impact fees is to use them in a way that is actually accomplishing the goal that they have been initially set up to respond to. So, and if that's not happening, that's definitely something that, and if you remember, when we started this process, we said we were going to accomplish certain things right now within, the time period of ending last December when we successfully did this. And the work now is great. We've changed our structure, but how do we continue to make our processes that implement that structure more effective? And that's the work that we have to begin now. And if you remember correctly, when we talked about that whole process, there is a process underway by DCA to kind of totally relook and review and revamp the impact fee process statewide. And we want to be plugged into that. And I'm not sure where we are with that at this point, Tiffany. Given everything that I know, there's not been a lot of progress at the state level. But what we can begin to identify are those areas. And I think we started that as part of our phase one in restructuring, you know, just the fee structure and implementing some new guidelines that would allow us to have a little bit more flexibility where we didn't. And so this conversation, I think, is a very, very important one in terms of just how we can start changing our program to spend the money faster. The money doesn't do us any good if it's still sitting in a pot that we've designated but aren't using.
Janity, can I ask a quick question? Do you all, have you started, now that you've had your first list of projects coming in, requests, or you already have your first list since the new guidelines, is the city optimistic since we expanded the terminology of what could be concluded, like we added sidewalks and things of that sort? Do we feel like now that
in certain cases,
not
not in all cases, yes.
Well, do you think that helps at all? I mean, in a big way?
Oh, I think it definitely helps. I think it's an important first step, because that first step helps us to work with our state partners and our regional partners to start making the argument that it should be expanded. You know, that is not something we can do on our own. And so taking this first step in changing the language to at least allow for more multimodalism in corridors that meet their criteria is important.
This is Kevin. It sounds like the city was being more restrictive than it had to under state law in terms of the types of projects they could expend impact fees on. And so one thing that the study's done is increased the types of projects that the city can spend impact fees on to be consistent still with state law. I'm not clear what additional action by DCA is going to open up. So that's one question I guess I would have, Janity. But the other question is anybody looking at projects that have been encumbered that just aren't moving and deciding to potentially reallocate impact fees to other projects that would likely be implemented quicker?
I know that that's definitely something we discussed, and as far as the status on that, I'd have to defer to our team that's been working on that. But yes, that's definitely something that we want to do. If you're not moving on projects, we need to find ways to disencumber that funding in order to allow it to be on something that can move forward and have impact.
Right. So quick suggestion, and that is on this document here, where you've got projects listed by collections and encumbrances, add another column or row or whatever it needs to be, just to say, actually, I should say, sorry, the FY numbers, that's, I guess, collections, but why not have of the projects that were encumbered in FY 14 through 19, have another number in terms of how much of those encumbrances have been spent?
Okay.
And then a catch-all that I guess would be pre FY 14 of how many of those encumbrances have yet to be spent. Just to start tracking and getting a public handle on this.
And encourage more accountability.
That's right.
I think those are good suggestions. But I do know that one of the phase 2 objectives was to really dig a little deeper into, revamping some of our administrative processes, because what we did in phase 1 was kind of like the low-hanging fruit. What could we change right away? And changing the system in a deeper way really requires us to understand where DCA wants to go with the program. And as we, pointed out, several months ago, they're undergoing a revision and a review. And we want whatever we do to align with that, but and have some influence wherever possible to revamp some things just based on our experience. As one of the cities that has to deal with restrictions and limitations that very few other cities in Georgia have to deal with. And so
We have that list of phase 2. Like, I know it's somewhere, but is that something, Tiffany, you could recirculate as what we kicked into phase 2? I mean, I remember some of it was we wanted to improve reporting, administrative processes. We wanted to figure out big picture with the state. I remember those 3. There were definitely some other numbers we may have wanted someone to run, but we didn't have time.
So we are looking for the state to come forth with their revisions. I was on a meeting with them about a week or 2 ago, and they are stating that they will commence their conversations on their updates 2022. So due to the pandemic, they did put a pause in those conversations, but we'll pick that up later this year, early next year. So once we've seen the revisions the state will make to the program, at that time, we will revisit our program to see what revisions and updates can be made to align with the state.
But the most important thing for us right now, this is Janet again, I think, is to just make sure we implement this successfully and start to track and monitor the implementation, not only of the new fees, but allow this to be an ongoing process for what's working and what's not working, so that we can, once the state decides what it's going to do, be able to input all of that information into our phase 2 of making our impact fee program much more effective. So what we've done, I think, is a huge step in correcting something that's been languishing for a long time. And now let's give ourselves some breathing space with useful information. And that's the challenge to our team, is to be able to come back to you guys in terms of, once this has been implemented, how are we doing in terms of just the tweaks that we're making administratively and how the new fee program is working?
Why couldn't we get a list? Any project that's been encumbered after a year or 2 years, pick a date, the money hasn't been spent, then it pops up. We need to look at it right now, and figure out what to do.
Well, I can't speak for any other departments. This is Ian McCray, but ATL DOT, we've actually been doing that. And this goes back to Kevin's question is, have we been looking at other encumbrance and have we been redistributing funds? Yes. So Shante and I have been doing that for the past year. It is a very slow process because you have to figure out what the initial scope of work was, and then the scope of work has to match a new project. So we've been kind of vetting through that. But also kind of the process we are thinking is that, Jim, basically based on the term or span of these lists, we're kind of thinking maybe a 5-year term for a project to have its encumbrance, and if something hasn't happened, or if the FTA matching funds haven't worked out, or if some kind of matching funds aren't available, give it that 5-year term and then reinitiate dollars back into the main pot to be used somewhere else.
Shante, I see your hand raised. Did you want to add something to that?
I'm sorry, Ian actually answered that question for me. But I did want to point out that we legislated nearly 5 million to active projects last year for impact fees, and we will be legislating another 7 million to active projects this year. And to piggyback on what Ian said, we are actually working on some legislation to move impact fee funding off those projects into the unrestricted bucket, because they haven't been used in so long on some of those projects.
And I'll piggyback on this. It wasn't mentioned in this presentation, but with the new legislation for type of projects can be done. So the previous year, I think we received about maybe 25 requests through the portal. This year we received, Tiffany can correct me, around 300. We had to vet those, and I believe around 150 were available for funding. So now this has become more than just a simple lift of vetting. We have to go through hundreds of projects now to figure out what we can do. So basically our collections versus available projects, it's 3 times as much as funding we have. So I think that circles back against Jim's question is, what are collections versus what we have for projects, and why should we still be collecting? It's basically we have way more projects now than we have funding.
Yes, and you're correct. This cycle, we did receive over about 326 projects, and of those, 145 were eligible. So we certainly have opportunities now to utilize those funds, way more than we had before. So this is an exciting time for impact fees, and those dollars certainly can be spent now, Jim.
And thank goodness we're going to have more of them come September 1st.
Absolutely.
It's the cool committee all of a sudden.
Right.
Hey, Tiffany, or even Janet, whomever, what do you attribute that? I mean, that is such an increase, and I don't know. I didn't notice people were so aware that the impact guidelines had changed, or what do you attribute that? Were there some grassroots organizations really out there pushing, put your project in? Were there active council people getting their neighborhoods?
It was all. We definitely had neighborhood units that were involved and engaged in the process. That submitted many projects. Of course, council members were heavily engaged in this process, and their teams came together to submit. And just overall, the excitement of expanding the scope of what impact fees can be used for. I think there are many people that's looking at the program now and are aware of what can be funded. And so they really involved themselves this time around. And We were just really excited. Again, we went from 45 submissions last cycle to over 300.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's really phenomenal and just, attributes to the work of this committee and, being able to expand what we're able to do. So we're really excited on where we're headed.
And Tiffany, if I can just add, I mean, this was a cycle where we had not only the development of our CIE, but we had the development of our comprehensive development plan. And the two go hand in hand. And, all of these efforts are part of implementing Atlanta City Design. I mean, when it comes down to it, that is what the CIE supports. That is what our construction work program or our community work program supports. And all of the elements that have to do with our comprehensive development plan strive to achieve, because that is what our spending, our infrastructure spending, our policy initiatives, all of those things, if we have adopted Atlanta City Design as the vision for our city, all of these things have to ultimately start aligning with that. And so there may have been a little bit more activity associated with this CIE because we also have to update our comprehensive development plan, which is also due to go to council at around the same time for approval, because they are supporting documents. This is our illustration to the state and our regional partners that the vision that we have articulated corresponds to the policies that we are putting in place and the actions, which include a lot of the implemented projects, the projects to be implemented as part of our CIE are in line with that ultimate vision. So I'm happy to hear that we've gotten so much input, because we've also gotten, historical input on our comprehensive development plan. Our CDHS meeting a couple of weeks ago had over 1,000, they had to do it over two days because there was so much. And that's a good thing, because that means that the conversation is happening. And the conversation is not happening just around, the policies that we're looking to implement. It's also looking at the projects and neighborhoods and areas are getting involved in saying that may be good for some other portion of our city, but that's not good for me. And that's okay, because we can then begin having a conversation around what's working and what's not working. And then we can also start having a conversation around educating and providing information around what we're doing that makes sense for people, as opposed to, them having to dig for information. No, we want to put all of that information out there so that people understand how all of these things correlate in terms of the decision-making process about how our city moves forward. And so I think it's a great thing that we had so many projects suggested, and we've had so much commentary around our CDP, and the commentary needs to continue. And that's how we shape and evolve our program. That program being what we actually put on the ground.
Well, what is our, Tiffany, I'm not sure I see this in the agenda, but what is our next step? I mean, I know we meet again, but like, what is our sort of focus of our next meeting called?
So our next meeting will cover the same analysis for the 2022-2026 CIE. So we're looking at maybe about December or January to conduct that analysis with you all once the CIE is adopted in October.
So is it possible between now and then for your group to work on some of the reporting suggestions we gave? And also, I mean, to the extent that it's helpful, I mean, we're happy to look at some draft reporting or whatnot, just circulate it around and give our input so that we get it to a place that we're really happy with in December. Happy to be a guinea pig on that.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, did you have anything else, Tiffany? No more announcements, just that we'll get together in December?
Yes, that was the end of the announcements for me.
Okay, so I guess we'll set our date when we know more in November or December. We'll have to take that offline. We'll have a date today. Okay, well, I'll entertain. Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I have one last question if I could. It's Rod Teachy. Tiffany, I know in the past months there was talk about amending the size of and the makeup of the committee. Is that still something under consideration, or has anything been decided with that? And then could you remind the current committee members when our term expires?
I can send out your dates to you on the expiration of your terms. We have not received any notifications or communication from council or the administration on adding additional members. But as soon as we hear something, we will certainly follow up with you all. And I'll send those dates out to you guys as well.
Okay. All right, thanks. Is there I'll entertain a motion to adjourn and complete the exiting roll call.
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Seeing we have a second, we'll take a vote to adjourn. Rod Teachy?
Yes.
Jim Brown?
Yes.
Stacy McCoy? Kevin Green?
Yes.
Okay, with a vote of 4 yeas, 0 nays, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you
All right.
all. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.